The very first halacha that we find in this Parshas Mishpatim is about a slave. That if a person, for reasons either because he couldn't pay back a debt or on his own volition, decided to sell himself into slavery, it's called a Eved Ivri, a Jewish slave, says the Torah, the maximum time that this person can be sold into slavery is 6 years, till the sabbatical year. But then the pasuk says, what happens if this slave decides he prefers to stay into this position? He likes his master, he likes his family that he developed, that he received while being a slave. As the pasuk says, "V'momar yomar ha'eved." If the servant says, "Ahavti es adoni," I like my master, he's very kind to me, he looks after me, he takes care of everything that I need. Es ishti, my wife, es bonai, my children, lo yitzeh chofshi. I don't want to go out in freedom. I'm very well taken care of in this position, and I like this, what we call today, to be institutionalized. Says the Torah, what do we need to do? Then the master will have to pierce his ear with a drill, and he stays his servant forever. Actually, forever doesn't mean for eternity. It means up to the year of Jubilee, up to Yovel, a maximum thus of 49 years. Why do we drill his ear? So Rashi quotes the Talmud, and Talmud says, Oizen Zushe Shamas, this ear that heard on Mount Sinai, that you are supposed to be my servants, God says, you avodai, you're my servants. And this one decided to become a servant to a servant. In other words, to put in more trust in his master providing for his needs, rather than God who will and is providing for his needs. So the ear that didn't get a message needs to be drilled. In other words, another opening. Maybe he'll hear better. And therefore we drill the ear. But here's the question. We blame the ear for not heeding the message that he heard on Mount Sinai, that we are servants to God. But hold on, the experience of Sinai was different. It wasn't just about hearing. The pasuk says, we actually saw. Those words of God is something that we saw. If the ear is guilty of not remembering, so what's with the eye? The eye also saw these words of God. The eye saw the experience of Mount Sinai. The eye saw the revelation of Sinai that God is our master and God is our provider. So why isn't the eye also somehow brought in to symbolize that the eye doesn't remember what it saw? Why only the ear? So the Rebbe explains this as following. The difference between seeing and hearing: seeing is clarity. Hearing is more removed, in a certain sense. Now this clarity of God's presence that was real during the giving of the Ten Commandments on Mount Sinai is not one that we could be expected to have the same clarity post-Sinai. That was a momentary experience. But hearing is something that is a little bit more removed. This is something that we should be able to experience even after Sinai. In other words, when godliness is more concealed, when God's presence is not as real as it was on Mount Sinai. But we have to be able to incorporate it into our lives on a regular basis. The voice of Sinai is one that we have to hear continuously. Says God, I'm disappointed if the message of Sinai stopped at Sinai and you don't include it, you don't internalize it into your entire life experience. It needs to be drilled. It needs to be reminded. Who is in charge of us? To whom are we subservient? Are we subservient to man, or are we subservient to God? And therefore the Torah says, if the person says, I want to be a servant of man, you need to drill your ears. Maybe in terminology, you need to clean your ears, get a better hearing. And that's why the Torah attributes this fault to the hearing and not to the seeing. But we ask Eibishter, Rabbeinu Shalom, we want to see already. We've been hearing for a long time that Mashiach is coming. Time for us to see it in reality right now.